Hello friends, and welcome to a very special episode of Nerdventures, because today is our first indie comics showcase video, where we are going to be taking a look at Rian Miller's Man-Gull, one of the series that was submitted to me by Stockpile Comics, a company that I am looking forward to getting to know better. And so today we're going to be talking about one of their series, the first 2 issues of that series, on our very first Indie Showcase. These comics, along with 2 others, were submitted to the channel by a gentleman who goes by Outer Space Chase on YouTube. Thank you so much for submitting these comics, because they've been a really fun read. As I mentioned before, this is from Stockpile Comics, which is a small independent press, or at least I'm assuming it's small based on its output, independent press. As per all of these indie videos, these showcase videos, all of the information about the comics and the creators will be down in the description. So if you see anything that you like, please check out these creators through the links. You know, follow them on the various social medias. Follow the comic company itself. Stockpile has a website, which I will link below, where you can buy physical or digital copies of their books. They also have a Tumblr, which is like a work blog where they post, looks like different pages and things, or just a rotating selection of work that's being done by their artists and writers that work for them. And Rian Miller himself, I'm assuming it said Rian, R-A-I-N, R-I-A-N, so I'm hoping I'm saying your name right, has a Twitter that you can follow him at. It's all plugged in these comics themselves. So for context, I don't know that much about Stockpile. According to their website, they were founded in 2010. It is now 2017, and it seems like in total they've put out somewhere in the realm of a little bit under 10 issues. From what I could see, it didn't look like any of the series that they had put out had gone above issue 3, but there were a couple that had been issue 2s, or 2 issues, a couple that had been issue 3s, so the amount of output is not great, but the quality seems to be pretty nice for an indie small press, and they have a really nice website. Their slogan is less hype, more comics. So that's really awesome. It seems like it's not really about, you know, hyping up the stuff beforehand. It's just about delivering a quality product, and I definitely appreciate that. So let's look at Man-Gull itself, the first comic that I've chosen for the Indie Showcase, and give my honest thoughts about this fun little romp. First off, in terms of the books themselves, it's a pretty nice quality. The paper stock is really nice and thick. And I do definitely appreciate, as somebody who looks at indie comics here and there, I do appreciate that on the back it's actually a kind of a teaser, or like an in-house thing. It's not an ad. A lot of times you see stuff for like Kaboom, I believe that's what it's called, like the binding companies, or they'll have like a little ad on the back from somebody else to help finance it. It is nice, and I think it gives it like a little bit of a professional edge to have a book where the front and back cover seems to go with the book itself, and it's not an advertisement. The covers are color drawings, which are done by Rian Miller and then colored by Jesse Munoz. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong again. And they are nice covers. It's very representative of the style inside the book that Rian has, you know, except the book itself is black and white, but it's very representative of the style. You know, it's not one of those things where you see the cover and it's totally different from the book itself. It's really nice. In terms of the content in the issues, each one has, you know, its full-length issue, and then there's a number of pinups and other kind of back matter bonus material in each one. A little bit of different art that you can see from a number of different artists. It's not just Rian, it's a number of different people. And yeah, I mean, it's all pretty cool stuff. If you're into the Man-Gull universe, as it is, I guess, now, there definitely is a, you know, way to get more into it with some of the back matter stuff. It's kind of cool. It says on here the time between the 2 of these books seems to have been about 2 or 3 years. The cover on this one is signed as 2011. The cover on this one is signed is 2013, and the actual collection, this book right here, has like a little note from 2014. It says that there is a 3rd issue being worked on, and that Rian says in the little note that he wants it to take less time for issue 3 to come out, as there was a gap between 1 and 2. You know, it's now 2017, so I don't know exactly the status of that. Can't speak to that because I don't know the company or the gentleman who created it particularly well. But I do hope that there is a third issue on the way, and right now, like I said, you can get these 2 issues anyway, digitally or physically. And if you go physical, it's a nice copy for an independent book. It seems like really good value for the cash. So what is Man-Gull? Well, I guess you can probably figure it out partially from the covers. It is a really funny and interesting, half very serious procedural detective story, half off-the-walls seagull horror slasher book, which just sounds really funny, and it is, but it works really well, I think. The books themselves are focused around a detective named Nick, as he kind of investigates this, not murder, this dismemberment that happened to a gentleman in the very first issue of very first page of issue 1. And you see the aftermath of that dismemberment as he tries to figure out what the hell actually happened to this guy. And lo and behold, it turns out that a seagull has somehow dismembered his arms and is now using these arms, these human arms, to cause havoc amongst the citizens of this small town. So far, the story through these 2 has not progressed that much. Basically, through the 2 of these, it takes place probably over the course of like a day. It's all happening pretty quickly. But I think the writing is really good. It's funny. It's snappy. The script is excellent. You know, Rian absolutely has a complete understanding of scripting and visual storytelling of a comic. You know, thumbs up in terms of like technical understanding of scripting and writing. A good script, a funny script. I think that this is really well written. Rian also writes another comic, I can't think of it off the top of my head, that is published by Stockpile. So, you know, thumbs up. I think the writing definitely is of really good quality. It kind of reminds me, this whole kind of series actually reminds me a little bit of like the Grizzly Shark thing that Ryan Ottley put out at for Image kind of recently. That kind of idea of like a animal crazy horror comedy mashup, and I think it has a similar vibe to that, like strong writing, but that manages to focus on comedy as well as the kind of suspense indie stuff, or suspense horror stuff really, really well. The one thing I will say is that I think that issue 1 is great, like really good. I was thoroughly impressed when I read issue 1. I think issue 2 is good. I think part of the problem is that it leans a little bit too heavily into the detective, kind of hard-boiled. It's kind of fleshing out the life of Nick with his ex and the people of the town and his relationships with all of them. And I feel as though when it goes down that path, it gets a little bit too serious. And the Man-Gull, you know, murder violence stuff gets a little bit left behind, which is kind of unfortunate. And I think that Rian knows it, because in one of the notes in issue 2, he says there will be more Man-Gull in issue 3. You know, so I think he probably got that response, or at least understood it himself when he was writing it. So you know, issue 1 I would recommend reading without any hesitation. I think it's fucking awesome, really funny, really well written. Issue 2, I do think kind of drags a little bit by not putting as much of the Man-Gull in it, and by getting a little too realistic, a little too tight and focused, which is a strange complaint, but I feel like when you're going for kind of like a supernatural shock horror thing, like this is, kind of a comedy shock horror, you definitely would be served better by keeping it light some of the time, you know, and not always going into the depths of the characters as much, or at least being able to pull back with like a joke or something like that to kind of balance out the mood. Similarly, I think the art is really, really strong. I think it's really great. It's all black and white in here. It's a very, very sort of strong lined ink style. I don't know if the book is done digitally or physically. It wouldn't surprise me if it's done digitally. You know, I think a lot of probably smaller books do that, but I would be curious to know actually what the production, you know, procedures are for this particular book. But it looks really nice. The characters all have really great features and you know, animation. The proportions are great. The bodies are great. There is a very good transference of motion and energy into the characters, especially the Man-Gull stuff, and when there's violent stuff going on. Like, some of the art details in issue 1 are really fantastic, like very, very strong. I thought the art was really lovely. Like when Man-Gull gets into terror mode and is killing people, and when Nick is kind of fighting back and shooting, like the shootouts and stuff are really, really well done. As I said, the attention to graphic storytelling and telling a cohesive story through, you know, pictures and drawings and stuff is really, really well done. I do think that where this book suffers, I think issue 2 has some problems in that there are very few backgrounds. There's a lot of times in issue 2 where the characters are talking and they just become talking heads, and there's just white blank background behind them. And I really do think that if this book had a stronger, you know, background visual identity, kind of giving you an idea of where the characters were, I think it would be, you know, off the charts, like great for an indie book. As it is, I think it does suffer because when I was talking about the story getting a little bit too kind of serious and slow, that kind of is also the same time when the art gets a little bit less background heavy and it's a lot of just talking kind of heads pasted over it. And it feels, like I said, it doesn't feel as much of a pleasure to read. It's not as fun and kind of propulsive as issue 1 is when, you know, when they're outside and they're in the hospital and you kind of feel your surroundings and you understand where the characters are, you know, spatially to each other. And yeah, I mean, the end of issue 2 where there's kind of the Man-Gull appears and there's like some more violence perpetrated against a couple people in the town looks, you know, awesome. It really has a great visual identity and a great sense of movement and chaos and blood and guts, and like it's really, really strong. But I do wish that some of the background work could be, you know, more present, or at least cheated in some way, kind of like fudged a little bit, because just having the white floating talking heads does become tiresome in the middle stretch of the second book. Overall, I think the art is really very good, but I don't know if it's a issue of running out of time, running out of resources, whatever it is. I do think if there could be more you know, put into the overall visual fidelity of the backgrounds and the locations, that I could, you know, then universally recommend it without any qualms at all. As it is, I'm just interested to see where issue 3 goes, because 2 is strong in some ways, and it also kind of feels like a step back in some ways. So overall, Man-Gull, the first indie comics showcase from the Nerdventures channel, big thumbs up. I would highly recommend checking it out. I think it's funny. I think it's well drawn. I think Rian knows, you know, exactly where the sweet spot is. Just sometimes hitting that sweet spot between humor, seriousness, you know, strong visuals, and what's doable as a person drawing those strong visuals. Sometimes you know, it's a moving target, and I do feel like this, especially issue 2, doesn't universally hit that. But overall, I would recommend this book to anybody who's checking out indie comics, especially if you're into kind of like funny, gory indie comics, because it's a really, really fun read. Stockpile seems like they're doing some really cool stuff. I would definitely recommend following them, checking them out. Rian seems like a really funny guy. I mean, based on what I've seen here with his writing, he must be in real life. Either that or he's getting it all out like on the page. But it's really, really good stuff. Man-Gull issue 1 and 2, available Stockpile Comics, gets a big Nerdventures thumbs up. I was really glad to make this my first indie showcase comic, because I think this definitely showcases the potential of what indie comics can do. You know, what they can accomplish and the vision and kind of thing that they can outset. Like, I could see this becoming, you know, something bigger and then being collected in a trade in a way that is really fun and satisfying. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you give Stockpile and Rian a follow and your time and attention. Check out their physical and digital copies of their comics if you're interested, and I will be back soon with more independent showcase. Thanks, guys. See you in the next one.